So we are getting very, very close until we get to the last NBA draft video, until the lottery, and I'm like not even gonna lie, it's some part of me is kind of happy, but a lot of parts of me is like, yeah, this is kind of sad because it's almost like the part of me that's happy is that we're getting really close to the moment, which is cool, but I'm not gonna be able to make these videos anymore for a minute, which is again kind of upsetting. But in today's one, I will be talking about who I think should go with the first overall pick in the 2023 NBA draft all the way to the 25th. Again, a video talking about 26 to 30 will also be coming very, very soon. These videos are legitimately getting longer and longer, but still not as long as Zack Snyder's Justice League, or Zack Snyder, however the hell you say his name, because goddamn, that movie went on for about, I don't even know, 4.5 hours. I don't think we're going to get quite to that point, but we've almost got a whole entire movie of like draft videos to go over now. And again, before I get into it, of course, I would just like to preface off by saying that we don't officially know what the picks are from 1 to 14 just yet, because the NBA draft lottery has not happened at the time of making this video. So I'll basically just be going based off standings and where these teams sit and whatnot. And of course, when the draft lottery does come, we're going to have a far better understanding of where these teams are going to be picking, what players are going to be going. Of course, it's all going to change then, but we'll just worry about the now, and this is what I've got. So, again, if you guys would like to go see the individual clips, I do have the draft playlist linked down below, I do believe, all the NBA playlists, so go and check them out as well if you can't watch this whole thing, which, again, I don't blame you. It's about an 8 billion hour video, but yeah, I guess without further ado, with all that being said and done, let's just get straight into it. With the first overall pick, which is currently being held by the Detroit Pistons, I definitely don't think there is really much debate on who should go at pick number 1 in this draft. And of course, I will be selecting Victor Wembanyama, who is just one of the most special talents we have ever seen coming into the NBA for, some time now. The fact is, this guy is about 7'4". Some even have him listed as 7'5". Can literally ball handle and create his own shot like Kevin Durant. Of course, very much plays similar to a couple of the players drafted recently in Evan Mobley and of course Chet Holmgren. Even being compared to NBA All-Stars in the last couple years as well, like Kristaps Porzingis, but with the potential of being a 10 times better player. It's almost like this guy is being said to be, if you would kind of put Chet Holmgren and Kevin Durant and even Kristaps together, which is just an insane comparison. Some people literally have Kevin Durant as a top 10 player and literally of all time. And Victor, yeah, this guy is... The fact is, he's a lot taller than Kevin Durant, can do everything KD can do, but can guard the center position as well, and just has already been compared to like that Kristaps Porzingis defense when Kristaps was in his prime. And I think people forget how good of a defender Kristaps was back when he was playing for the New York Knicks before the injuries. That guy was averaging like 2 blocks a game as a 7-footer. And imagine what Victor's going to do as a 7'4" guy who can also create his own shot. Now, I know the Detroit Pistons have a couple centers that are trying to develop here and there, like Jalen Duren, and of course, the recently acquired James Wiseman. But this is a no-brainer for them. It just makes a whole lot of sense to go for this. You're going to pick best available, and the best available is by far Victor Wembanyama, who, partnering up with 2 prolific playmakers in Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham. Just, oh my god, it seems like an absolutely insane thing to put on paper. And if you are a Detroit Pistons fan, the potential of having Victor on your team right now would be pretty insane. Like, in a couple of years, you're definitely looking at, if Victor can stay healthy, you're looking at a potential NBA championship one day with that type of, I think, young core going on. And pick number 1 in Cade, a very good young defensive guard who can also ball handle and create his own shot in Jaden Ivey, and Victor Wembanyama. Yeah, it's just definitely one of the best, if not the best, young cores in the NBA. Of course, in saying all of these massive positives with Victor, there does unfortunately come some negatives, of course, those being the fact that there are a lot of concerns about his, I think, body and how he will hold up in the NBA. He's already had a bit of an injury past right now, an injury history, I should say, and he's only like 19 years old and is already kind of battling with that over his head. And again, I mentioned before Kristaps Porzingis being a 7'2" or so guy who would just be an absolute elite defender, but then the injuries started to come and he definitely struggled for a bit, has really bounced back now, but is not really the player I think a lot of people thought he could potentially be. And again, touch wood, but the main kind of knock and hit on Victor right now could definitely be his injury, history, and I think the issue that he could potentially further on do it. Again, he is a very slim and skinny player as well, who I think will definitely have to put on some weight when entering the NBA. But there is no doubt in my mind, Victor is, again, one of the most talented players coming into an NBA draft. Since Zion, since LeBron, etc. He definitely fits that criteria as one of the most talented players ever. And yeah, whatever team drafts him, we'll just obviously pray for the best so no injuries happen, but this guy could of course be a freak of nature, a 7'4" type of Kevin Durant player that is just, moves like a big man and all that type of stuff. And yeah, it's definitely going to be a really, I think, awesome thing to see maybe him in the NBA. With the number 2 overall pick though, we do have the Houston Rockets, and with that pick, I have the Houston Rockets selecting Scoot Henderson. I think this is also a really good pick for him, and of course the Rockets as well. I think this is a nice fit, and it makes a whole lot of sense. Scoot is of course 6'2" and is being compared to a bit of a hybrid of Russell Westbrook and Derrick Rose, and those are two awesome, I think, comparisons. Whether or not you want to hate on Russell Westbrook, there's no doubt to admit that this guy was an MVP of the league at one stage and has been known as a prolific ball handler and playmaker who can definitely help his team out quite a bit. The athleticism is very similar between these players, and I definitely see some Derrick Rose athleticism in him. And of course, the potential on the defensive end as just a really good, athletic, young point guard is definitely going to be there as well. I love this fit for the Houston Rockets. I've been saying for quite a bit now, they just need a point guard who's going to come in and steady the offense, be nice and calm, play make, and score when he needs to, and of course help defensively. That might not come in his first season, but it will definitely, hopefully, be there for them one day. And I just think it's a better fit to put him alongside Jalen Green than Kevin Porter. It's too hard to have these two guards who just continue to chuck up shots, not really calm and relax the offense. There's no real ball movement or, fluidity with having those two in the backcourt. And I think if you change Kevin Porter Jr. and replace him with Scoot Henderson, not only does that improve probably the defense and playmaking and ball movement of the team, I think it also calms Jalen Green down a little bit and kind of reassures him on the shot that he needs to take. I think he will get open a bit more with teams having the stress to guard Scoot Henderson. I think Scoot Henderson's the type of guy with a couple years in the NBA on his belt, can definitely, I think play make to Jalen Green a bit better than what Kevin Porter Jr. has so far in his career. And I think the ball movement will just be a whole lot better. Again, defense is a bit of an issue with this Rockets team. I believe they're one of the worst defensive teams in the league. So again, improving that on that end at the point guard position is also a really awesome thing. The fact that Scoot Henderson has been compared to 2 former MVPs of the league is an absolute astronomical thing. He has the shot creation athleticism that Derrick Rose had, athleticism that Russell Westbrook had, the playmaking that Russell Westbrook has, and all this type of stuff. The rebounding, I think, is there as well. yeah, he's definitely a player who I think could be somewhat complete in the NBA. And the rumor has it is he might not even be 6'2" anymore. There's rumors going around that he's actually going to be listed at 6'3" very, very soon. And that 6'2" listing might be wrong right now. So having a 6'3" guard definitely helps defensively as well. And this is just an obvious pick for the Houston Rockets. If they do want to take it that step further, I still think bringing in a veteran player to help Scoot Henderson develop and whatnot would be an awesome thing to potentially do. There's going to be a ton of guys out there that they could go and do, but in trade for. We know the Cleveland Cavaliers previously helped Darius Garland out by bringing in Ricky Rubio, again, veteran type of playmaking point guard who just was able to teach Garland new things and really helped him develop as a player. They're going to be options for Scoot Henderson. I think the Rockets should do that. Kyle Lowry might be up for trade very, very soon, and you could definitely take on his contract and get a first-round pick maybe out of it by doing it. And plus, you could bring in a veteran player who can help Scoot Henderson develop. And yeah, Lowry can help him with, on the defensive end, playmaking, all that stuff. And I just think that'd be a really awesome thing. And yeah, this is kind of a match made in heaven, I think, for the Houston Rockets. A really good idea. With the third overall pick, though, I do have the San Antonio Spurs selecting Brandon Miller. Now, I'm not sure if Brandon Miller is the most Spurs player out there. Spurs are really specific on the players that they, of course, try and take. We know that Jeremy Sohan was a very Spurs type of player, very defensive orientated. And Brandon Miller might not be as good of a defender as like a Jeremy Sohan type of guy, but I think there is a lot of potential on that end when we do look at Brandon Miller. He is, at the time of making this video, compared to Paul George coming into this draft, a guy who's 6'9", who has the ability to go from the 2 to the 4 position on defense. He is a bit lanky, but we know that's never been an issue for Spurs players in the past. He's incredibly athletic and a great scorer as well, and is believed that he could potentially develop on that two-way and type of role that Paul George has done for so many years, being an elite scorer and an elite defender as well. If Brandon Miller can, of course, be an elite defender in the NBA, that will 100% be what the Spurs want and what the Spurs need. Again, the only knock on Brandon Miller is there is a bit of an issue with explosiveness, and he doesn't exactly seem to have a great burst and being able to separate off the dribble. That can definitely be an issue in the NBA. It's a thing that makes a lot of players great, and we've seen draft players in history be not very good at that and not really translate to the NBA. Of course, one being Josh Jackson. There was always an issue sometimes with his, of course, I think, dribble off the first step, and I think he's burst at times, and Josh Jackson would either be really good, with that, and I think his athleticism would show that, but at times when he was kind of matched against, much more elite players than what he played with in college, we know Josh Jackson just couldn't do it, and that is a concern I think Brandon Miller could definitely have, but if he does adjust to that, I think he could be an absolutely terrific scorer in the NBA. But the most important thing is, I think with this Spurs team and how they want to play, if he can be a two-way player like Paul George and put an awesome and consistent effort in on the defensive end, he's going to be exactly what the San Antonio Spurs want, and he is going to fit into their system perfectly. And that's exactly what they need. It's been said that he's a pretty decent shooter as well. And yeah, I think that it will be a very good fit. Again, if he can be a defender, then yeah, awesome. It's a terrific move right there. Being lanky and all that stuff, one of the few teams that I don't think really care about that is the Spurs. The Spurs aren't going to force you to put on weight. They're not going to do any of that, I don't think. And if anything, Popovich is a terrific coach who's going to use that to his advantage and make sure that Brandon Miller gets the best out of it that he possibly can. So realistically, he might not be the most Spurs player in the world so far, but if he can develop into what they are saying Brandon Miller could potentially develop into, he will very rightfully become a Spurs player and could be a similar player to Paul George and even a Kawhi Leonard in the NBA, in my opinion. I think, yeah, that just kind of fits in with what I think the Spurs want. Now, with the 4th pick, I do have the Charlotte Hornets. Of course, it's a bit of a hard one. The 2 players that I actually was battling on whether or not who I wanted Charlotte to pick were actually going to be out of Ausar Thompson and Amen Thompson. And that's pretty funny because, believe it or not, they're actually both twins. But with the 4th overall pick, I've actually decided to pick Ausar Thompson, who is, I think, the better defender / shooting guard of the duo. I believe Amen Thompson is actually ranked higher and is ranked at 4th, and Ausar is ranked at 5th. But I actually think Ausar, he definitely just, I think, makes a lot more sense for this Charlotte Hornets team, and they're both very similar as a player, but I think Ausar is just better equipped to guarding that shooting guard position, which I think kind of meshes well with LaMelo Ball. I think if you were to go with Amen, it just might take the ball a little bit off LaMelo, which is not exactly what you want. I think Ausar coming into this team and playing the shooting guard position at 6'7" is absolutely lethal. The fact you would have 2 6'7" players in your backcourt defensively would just be absolutely insane. I believe he has a 6'11" wingspan, and just again on that defensive end, I think could be a really interesting player. He's actually said to be a bit of a skywalker. He has a freakish ability as a player who can definitely dunk really consistently. He's being compared to a couple different players here and there. I believe he's kind of being compared to a bit of SGA and Terrence Ross, which, I don't know, you don't see many players compared to Terrence Ross because of who Terrence Ross is now. Not very good anymore, but I think people forget how good Terrence Ross was back when he played for the Toronto Raptors and whatnot. An extremely athletic shot creator who could kind of do really anything on the floor. Again, Ausar is being said that he has a decent mid-range. He could definitely develop on it down the line, but he has an extreme upside as a defender who reads the passing lanes very, very well and has extremely good weak side help as well. There's not exactly too much knocks on Ausar. I don't believe he is as good of a ball handler as what his brother is, and I think there is some work for him to do as an outside shooter. But from what I'm hearing is he's still a pretty decent shot creator who is extremely athletic and will definitely appear on a highlight tape every now and then, while also just having the potential to be an extremely good defender in the NBA. And I actually think that's kind of what you need to put with LaMelo Ball. He doesn't need to handle the ball or anything like that on this team, which is, of course, his weaknesses. I think his upside is exactly what the Charlotte Hornets need, which I think is, of course, athleticism, very, very good defense, and still maybe another shot creator to come in. And again, if they move on from Terry Rozier, which is rumored to be happening pretty soon, Ausar would be a really good shooting guard to play with LaMelo Ball. I think it'd actually be a really, really good duo, and everything LaMelo Ball can't do, which is, I think, consistent defense and all that type of stuff, I think Ausar kind of comes in and picks up that pieces. And if you got a dude like Ausar who can be pretty decent with the mid-range and, just league average from the three-point shooting and all that type of stuff, that's still decent. You're bringing him in, I think, for his defense and shot creating, and I think that will definitely help out LaMelo Ball down the line. And yeah, if they manage to bring back Miles Bridges, imagine having a team of like LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges, and Ausar. You're literally just going to have non-stop highlight tapes all the time. It's going to be absolutely awesome, I think, for that NBA team. And again, as I just said, he's not exactly that great of a passer or ball handler, but he kind of does everything else really, really well and has an extreme upside on defense that should definitely translate to the NBA level. With the 5th overall pick, I do have the Orlando Magic, who I believe have another first round pick that should be in the top 10 in this draft as well. And with this pick, it was pretty hard because they already have a lot of guards, but I do actually have them taking Amen Thompson. This was an extremely hard one because it's really unsure. I'm really unsure what the Orlando Magic are going to be doing with their future guard situation. They already seem like they've got their power forward and I think small forward locked in with Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero. Of course, their center position might need to have some work down the line, but still Wendell Carter is a pretty reliable center. At that point guard position, they've got Markelle Fultz, who has definitely improved quite a bit this season, coming back from injury. Cole Anthony, who I've always said looks like he could be a really good six-man down the line. And I think that's what they're finally using him as, and I think that makes sense. And of course, Jalen Suggs. Now, I don't know what's going to be going on with Jalen Suggs. I'm not too sure exactly what his future is going to be like on this team. I don't think they have really got what they wanted out of him. But if you bring in a dude like Amen Thompson, I think that's actually a really nice play to maybe start with Markelle Fultz, who kind of, again, fits in with this team a little bit, especially with the height. Having him as a 6'7" shooting guard down the line, I think would be a really cool idea. Amen Thompson, I believe, from all the reports that I've kind of heard, is actually being compared to SGA, which is a really awesome comparison. He has been really, really good in the NBA as well. And also, he's been compared to Ja Morant for his athleticism and explosiveness, which is just really good as well. Unlike his brother Ausar, he's actually said to be a really good playmaker and ball handler, which I think would be really nice for this team too. He's being said as a bit of a 6'7" combo guard who can definitely be really awesome on the defensive end, but can definitely be a playmaker who can also score. This is, of course, a really good comparison in the SGA type of thing, being called a combo guard who has extremely good first step and explosive athleticism is definitely something you want on your team. The issues are, I think, with Amen Thompson is he is being said that he's not a very good three-point shooter and can definitely struggle from the three-point line, which is a bit of an issue that could somewhat be a deal breaker for the Orlando Magic, as they already have Markelle Fultz, who's not a very good three-point shooter at the time of making this video, and Paolo Banchero, who I don't think has really been given the opportunity to show whether or not he's a good three-point shooter or not. Of course, he's had to take a lot of the shots and be a big shot creator guy, but I think down the line he could definitely improve on that as well. There are a bit of issues with this. If you have a starting five of Fultz at the 1, Thompson at the 2, Wagner at the 3, Banchero at the 4, and Carter at the 5, there's not a whole lot of three-point shooting on there, and that could definitely scare me. But if you're going to look at a team like the Cleveland Cavaliers, who, again, have a starting five of Garland, Mitchell, Okoro, Allen, and Mobley, other than, like, Garland and Mitchell, there's not really any three-point shooting in that starting five at all. Of course, Okoro has improved, but your guards don't. They're the only ones that have the, consistent three-point shooting going on. And I think Franz Wagner can be a consistent three-point shooter. I think, Banchero with time can definitely be a consistent three-point shooter. And who knows? Amen Thompson might be a decent three-point shooter one day. But the realism is, if you are making this team and you're picking Amen Thompson, you're not doing it because of the three-point shooting. You're doing it, I think, because of the defensive end and, ball movement that could eventually come out of this one day. I think the ball movement could be absolutely awesome, and the defense will be absolutely scary. You think about it like this: you'd have Markelle Fultz at the point guard, who's like 6'3", Thompson, who's 6'7" at the shooting guard, Wagner's like 6'10", Banchero's like 6'10", and then I think Carter, 6'11" or so as well. I think 6'10" there too. The defense would be able to switch from nearly every position on there other than Fultz. It would be an absolute scary thing, and I think that's where you bring in Amen Thompson for, and I think he can definitely help out with that and just be a really nice player. So I think that makes a whole lot of sense for the Orlando Magic to go with him. Might not be the greatest fit, but he's the best player available, and you can turn it into a good fit, very similar to what the Cleveland Cavaliers have done with their drafting. They can become a very good defensive-orientated team who is absolutely insane when it does come to ball movement and athleticism by just picking Amen Thompson. With the 6th overall pick, it has definitely changed a couple times in the last couple of days, but at the time of making this video, the Portland Trailblazers actually own the 6th pick, and this was a really hard player, I think, to kind of select for them, because it's really hard to kind of tell what direction Portland are going to be going in. Will they be, potentially trading this pick to continue to maybe furthermore, try and add another star to help Dame contend for a championship? Or will they, be doing what they did last season, where they draft another top 10 pick player to kind of develop alongside Dame and all of the above? And that's what I kind of think they're probably going to be doing in this draft. So in kind of taking that all in, I do actually have them taking best available, and it so happens that the best available kind of fits what Portland actually need right now. So with the 6th overall pick, I do have the Portland Trailblazers selecting Jarace Walker, who is, of course, I believe, a 6'7", 6'8", very heavy, strong type of power forward who is extremely athletic and can definitely, catch a lob here and there. Just a very versatile option. He's being compared to a bit of a John Collins type of, Paul Millsap type of player as well. He's being said that not only can he guard the 4 very well, but he's also flexible enough to actually move over to that 5 position if needed. He's, of course, also being listed as a really solid 3-point shooter and a nice mid-range shooter as well, even having decent field goal efficiency at the moment. And I just think he honestly kind of fits what the Portland Trailblazers are kind of wanting to do right now. And they've already got a couple of certified guards, of course, in Shaedon Sharpe, Damian Lillard, Anthony Simons. And then they've, of course, got a really certified forward in Jeremy Grant. I think it'd actually be really cool to kind of add another one of those guys in Jarace Walker, who not only can help with the defense that they do, of course, sometimes lack, but can switch onto that 4 and that 5, definitely help out from the perimeter, but also being an athletic beast who can honestly potentially crash the boards and also score off a Damian Lillard lob, off a pick and roll, all of that type of stuff. I definitely think Jarace Walker has the capability of doing. Now, there's nothing really kind of flashy about this guy's stats. He is averaging 11 and a 7 per game. That is 11 points and 7 rebounds. But he honestly, just the way he kind of plays and the way he goes about it, really does seem like it would kind of convert over to the NBA. And I think that was kind of what was being said about John Collins before he was, of course, drafted into the NBA as well. I really do think when we look at a guy like Jarace Walker, he kind of ticks that same thing. And I just think this guy can definitely help out the Portland Trailblazers, and he gives them a reason to not want to trade this pick if this is where the Trailblazers do, of course, select from. If you add a guy like Jarace Walker, this can definitely help and really change the dynamic of this Portland Trailblazers team. I really don't think Portland are as off as what a lot of people think they are. There is definitely a lot of changes and things they still do desperately need to make, but I'm really happy with Damian Lillard wanting to be loyal, and he's actually been content with staying as a Portland Trailblazer, and I really think there's still a lot to build on with this team. Their starting 5 is pretty decent. We'll get that straight out of the way. That's definitely a really nice thing about their team. But their bench is really not that good, in my opinion. And I think if you go out and sign, draft Jarace Walker, of course, maybe go out and sign a potential another starter, right? We could be looking at a situation where you're moving players like Matisse Thybulle and Cam Reddish, of course, to that bench type of role. Therefore, they can also go and sign maybe some more veteran type of dudes to come off that bench. I think their starting 5 before the trade deadline was really nice. Now, it could definitely do some work, but I still think it's pretty solid. But you get a couple dudes on there who could definitely come off the bench and maybe impact there as well. So, for their starting 5, look, there might be a little bit of work because, of course, they did trade Josh Hart. But before that, it was looking really, really nice and something that they could definitely build on and add to by the bench. And if you're bringing in a dude like Jarace Walker, a player like that, and you go out and do a couple other things here and there, I think the Portland Trailblazers could definitely be a really solid team going forward. So that's why I have them selecting Jarace Walker with the 6th overall pick. Now, moving on to pick number 7, we of course do have the Indiana Pacers, who have definitely been a bit of a shock team, I think, in 2023. They've, of course, dropped off a bit, but showed really promising signs with Tyrese Halliburton, Benedict Mathurin, and, of course, Miles Turner just being a really good I want to call big three, and I definitely think they will progress into being one of the biggest big threes, if that makes sense, in the NBA. And I still think there is a lot of room to add there. And there's a real big kind of Indiana pacer type of player who's available on the board right now, who I kind of think would somewhat fit this, of course, Pacers team. And that actually does, of course, happen to be Cam Whitmore, who I believe is a 6'7" small forward who is being compared to a bit of OG Anunoby and Desmond Bane as well. But I actually like that OG Anunoby comparison a bit more. Kind of a guy who doesn't need to be a big shot creator, but a guy who can, be a very consistent 3-point shooter who can maybe defend 1 through 4 and just be an extremely versatile defender on the court. And I think that's what we're kind of looking like we're going to be seeing with Cam Whitmore. I think the ability to maybe turn into a bit of a shot creator will be there. We know OG and Desmond Bane kind of ended up becoming shot creators as their their career has gone on further and further at the time of making this video. Of course, the thing is with Cam Whitmore is he will definitely be a project player, as he is just a decent defender now. It's not like he's extremely elite at that, but the potential is definitely there, and I think he can really mount into being a very solid defender in the NBA. He's just really known to be a really nice shooter who I think can kind of move around the field and just be a really good around the court, and just be a really, really consistent guy like that. Again, he's not exactly that great when it comes to ball handling or anything like that, but the kind of beauty thing about this Indiana Pacers team is he doesn't exactly need to be. They've already got a bunch of really great guys who can handle the ball and pass the rock. If you're bringing in a dude like, Cam Whitmore, he kind of fills in what this Pacers team doesn't have consistently, and that is maybe a guy who's going to be an elite role player in the NBA. I think what they are going to want right now is for Benedict Mathurin and, of course, potentially Tyrese Halliburton to be the two big shot creators on this team, the two all-star type of guys. And then I think they're going to want Miles Turner to be the, perennial defender of this team as well. They've already got all of these boxes kind of ticked. The only couple things I think they might need are some extremely good role players, which they somewhat already have one in Buddy Hield, but could definitely furthermore build on that. And of course, maybe some more rebounding here and there, and maybe a player to play that power forward position down the line. So you could go and draft Cam Whitmore, maybe trade a Buddy Hield or so to bring in a power forward here and there as well. One that could be on the move very soon is like a John Collins. I just think, geez, imagine seeing a team that'd be like Halliburton at the 1, Mathurin at the 2, Whitmore at the 3, Collins at the 4, and Turner at the 5. Oh my god. Everyone in there can guard everyone. They all are pretty decent shooters. Collins maybe not at the moment, but has definitely shown he can be in his career. Bunch of athletic beasts in there as well. Like, goddamn, that team would be really good looking on paper. And yeah, I think Cam Whitmore might be somewhat of a more of a mystery to some of the players that I have kind of talked about previously, but this is a dude that could come in and be an extremely versatile shooter, maybe can develop on that shot creating and I think defensive end as well. But I think that's what is so good about this guy, is it already looks like he is getting there, and by the time he's in the NBA could turn that extremely good shooting touch all around the court into being an elite shot creator maybe one day as well. Like, if it doesn't work out, then whatever, right? But if it does work out, then yeah, you've got like 3 really good young shot creators on this Indiana Pacers team. And worst thing for Cam Whitmore is he might be an elite shooter, which is that's a pretty promising sign in the NBA. If you can be an elite shooter and defend your player and just do your role, there's not much more you can ask for. And I definitely think this is the type of guy who can maybe accomplish something like that in the NBA. So with the 7th overall pick, I do have the Indiana Pacers selecting Cameron Whitmore. Now with the 8th overall pick, this is a team that, I'm not exactly too sure how I feel about this team. It's a very interesting one, but it is the Washington Wizards. I am also very happy that Bradley Beal has decided to, stay. I think it's a very awesome thing to have loyalty among players, and it's, I think, a good thing to know that there is a player who is here right now who is willing to help build this team and help rebuild it, and is going to be here for the long term. So I just think it makes a whole lot of sense to continue to hit the draft, which they've been doing, and hopefully for them, they'll finally nail an extremely good pick, which they haven't been able to do in the last couple years, unfortunately, with players like Johnny Davis just not really panning out so far. Of course, they're still young, and we still got to give them time. They could become very good players, but at the end of the day, the player who I have them drafting, I think, will hopefully change this team. And again, he's a bit of a tiny bit of a project, but also this guy has a lot of potential to be like a Josh Giddey type of players who he's being compared to, and that is, of course, Anthony Black. I think the big thing this Washington Wizards team has been needing for a very long time is a playmaking point guard, and even though Anthony Black's stats haven't exactly been that great when it does come to the playmaking, and he definitely has a lot of potential to make those extremely good, flashy passes, like a couple of the NBL players who have gone into the NBA, those being LaMelo Ball and, of course, Josh Giddey. Now, Anthony Black didn't actually go to the NBL, but he kind of plays a lot like those two guys. He actually comes from Arkansas College, and again, he's actually been compared to Josh Giddey and a bit of Sean Livingston as well, which are pretty good comparisons. This guy is a very nice 6'7" guard who can definitely play, I think, the 1 through the 3. He is a really unselfish player who can definitely make some really nice, smart passes. He's also got a really decent jump shot that may need to, of course, develop his three-point shot, but it is looking really nice. But he's a guy who's a pass-first type of guy who I think could really benefit this Washington Wizards team down the line. It's something that they really haven't had the luxury of having, is a point guard that will actually pass the ball and help out on that type of, side of the NBA. And I think if you put a dude like Anthony Black there and you tell him all you got to do is pass the ball and be a versatile defender, which the Washington Wizards kind of have neither of, unfortunately, then yeah, you're filling two of, I think, the biggest holes that this Wizards team has in passing and defense. And I think this would be awesome to partner up with Bradley Beal and potentially Kristaps. No idea if Kyle Kuzma's going to be here for the long run. Again, this big three just unfortunately hasn't really worked that well. I don't know if it's the supporting cast or what it is that they have on this team that is completely going wrong. I just think it's the lack of defense and playmaking being the two main culprits. And yeah, they unfortunately missed out last year where a couple players that they wanted to draft, like Dyson Daniels, didn't actually fall to them. And Dyson Daniels was, of course, drafted to the Pelicans, who I also think isn't really working that well there. Would have been awesome to see him on this Wizards team. But yeah, they need a dude like Dyson Daniels. They need a guy like Josh Giddey. Those guys who are both happen to be Australian, but both happen to be guys who are like 6'7", can defend really, really well, have a decent jump shot, and of course are really nice playmakers. Anthony Black fits that criteria, and as I said, he brings in two things that the Wizards don't have, which is defense and playmaking. Of course, he will be not probably as efficient in those things coming into the NBA. We've seen a lot of point guards in recent times like Darius Garland, struggle in the NBA at the start, but then eventually develop into being a really good player. I think Dyson Daniels is going to be another one of those guys. And then Anthony Black, not sure it will click for him straight away. But again, if Bradley Beal is patient, which he has been for an extremely long time, so I don't see why he wouldn't be. I think Anthony Black would be a nice fit. And yeah, a guy who will average you, hopefully for them, maybe 12 points and 5 or 6 rebounds maybe in his first year and 5 assists maybe. Definitely would be a really nice thing to bring in. And yeah, I think it just would benefit this Washington Wizards team quite a bit. Now, moving on to pick number 9, we do have the New Orleans Pelicans, who are in an extremely weird spot where they have this really awesome roster The issue is they just got players who don't want to stay healthy, unfortunately. Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram are two of the best forwards in the league, but they're never on the court, never even on the court together. And when they actually did manage to play some games, we did see that the New Orleans Pelicans were like, I think at one stage the 3rd seed in the West, and looked really, really nice, but they just had a bunch of injuries and they just fell down, even falling past the Lakers, who they own, pick swaps for. So, yeah, it's just an extremely unfortunate thing for them. I wouldn't be surprised if they traded this pick. I just don't really know what more they need. You could definitely go for a playmaker and maybe something like that. But you've got a hidden gem sitting there like Dyson Daniels, who I think could be exactly like Josh Giddey. Other than them both being Australian, they're both 6'7", pass first type of dudes with decent jumpers who can defend pretty nice on the ball. So he's already kind of there for you. I really don't know what else this team needs. They just need to stay healthy and hope the development of players like Dyson Daniels pans out, because if Daniels becomes what they had Lonzo doing in New Orleans, if not even a lot better, which I think he could, then you should have a really good team, and he'd be an awesome player to keep alongside Zion, CJ, Brandon Ingram. But yeah, you maybe just adding a really nice role player would be the right way to go here. And I think one of the best role players in this draft with the 9th overall pick does happen to be Gradey Dick, who is an extremely efficient player who I think has an extremely well-versed jump shot, who could be a guy that very similar to a player like Reggie Bullock, who is kind of being compared to right now, as a guy who you can chuck in the corner every now and then, and of course be a really, really good shooter, a guy who can play the 2 and the 3, but also defend the perimeter really well, which is what Gradey Dick has done. Of course, he's from Kansas, and in his season that he has played for them, he's been averaging an extremely efficient 14 points per game, which has been really good. It's being said that Gradey Dick is a very versatile wing who is a great shooter with high upside. He's a good athlete who is great at moving without the ball and can always find a good place for a catch and shoot. He's great floor spacing forward with good shot creation ability. My thing is, this team does have already a couple of really nice shooters, but I think if your goal is to have, Dyson Daniels and Zion Williams as your point forwards, which I think is what they're trying to build and have been trying to build right now in New Orleans for a little bit, then you're going to need some shooters around him. They've of course got Trey Murphy, who's there, CJ, Brandon Ingram, and a couple other dudes here and there, but they do still lack some shooting sometimes. Josh Richardson's not an elite shooter. Herbert Jones is not a very good shooter at all. I don't think Jose Alvarado, from remembrance, is a very good shooter. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of lacking on shooting here and there. I don't think Valanciunas has been that good from 3 this season, and has definitely dropped off quite a bit as well to kind of what he used to be. But yeah, I just think if you're going to want to have Zion and, Dyson Daniels as two of the point forwards, you're going to need to add some shooting, and I think a dude like Gradey Dick, who can not only add you some really nice 3-point shooting, but he can also be very, very efficient and, I think, reliable. I think you're kind of looking at a dude like Corey Kispert from one of the previous drafts, who I think is averaging around a good, efficient 10 points per game or so for the Wizards. But you're looking at kind of that player, I think, but with Reggie Bullock's type of defense, and a much better perimeter guy who can definitely, I think, switch a lot better, and that's why he's, I think, rated so highly. I think there's also a very big kind of, I think, spectacle that this guy could be a really good shot creator in the league as well, because right now, really, the low that you'd think this guy would achieve is just being a good shooter, right? But I think the high of what he could be is not only a good shooter who can defend, but maybe a guy who could create his own shot when there's an absence of a of a Brandon Ingram or a Zion Williamson. I feel like maybe that's another thing the Pelicans might need is as soon as these guys go down, you have no one who can really fill in and create these shots. You're not really going to have a guy like Larry Nance come in and do any of that type of stuff. I just don't think that's practical and, realistic to see Larry Nance just pulling up from the mid-range and creating his own shot. That's the issue with this Pelicans team but it could be solved right here with a guy like Gradey Dick, who, with a healthy Zion and a healthy Brandon Ingram, he can be a really nice three-point shooter who can defend the perimeter and switch. But without Zion and without Brandon Ingram, maybe this Gradey Dick guy could be a very nice shot creator who can do it on both sides of the court. I think that's what you're kind of wanting if you're the New Orleans Pelicans. And then once you've got him and you, of course, develop Dyson Daniels into hopefully the guy you want him to be, maybe fix up their centers because Jackson Hayes and Valanciunas haven't been that good. Or hell, maybe even run Zion as a small ball center. That'd be, unstoppable. I think you're going to have a very, very good New Orleans Pelicans team, in the future. Now, with the last pick, we've got pick number 10, and that is the Orlando Magic. And with this pick, I will, of course, have them selecting Taylor Hendricks, who's a 6'9" power forward, who was definitely kind of rose, as a high, drafted player on this list. I think that a lot of people had him a little further down, a month or two ago, but he's really kind of, again, rose to be a really nice player. And at the time of making this video, I think his comparison is actually a bit of a Jeremy Grant type of guy, a 6'9" power forward who can maybe switch to that small forward position, play some nice defense, but hopefully be, a good three-point shooter as well. I think this is a nice thing that could add to the Orlando Magic. I'm not exactly too sure if he is the best player available with this pick. I think there might be a couple more players available, but of course they're all guards, and the Orlando Magic have so many guards. Not just that, even though he might not be the best player available at this pick, I actually think Taylor Hendricks might have the best potential nearly out of all the players I've got available, because you kind of know what you're going to get, and he's even been titled as Mr. Versatility on the court. Some people are calling him, as he's just a kind of guy who's so versatile out there. He can really do it all, and I just think there's not really too much of a knock on this guy. It's being said that he's an extremely good dunker and just kind of really puts those highlight plays on the court. He's a really good pick and roll type of player that has potential to be really nice in the NBA. His defense is also really good, having a really awesome ability to block shots, and he gets in the passing lanes very, very comfortably, and it just seems like a really nice overall fit there as well. It's being said as well that he's also kind of maybe even being compared to a bit of an Andrew Wiggins type of mold if Jeremy Grant isn't the one, which makes me think that, not only can this guy guard the small forward and power forward, but maybe there's the potential that some people see for him to maybe even switch onto a shooting guard in the NBA, which is very hard to kind of find, in a 6'9" type of guy. Like, I mean, you look at Kevin Love, who's 6'8", and he can barely even guard his own position, right? You're looking at a dude who's 6'9" who can maybe push to that shooting guard position as well. The Andrew Wiggins comparison is something I really like. Just a guy who has an extremely nice knack on the defensive end, who's really, really athletic and can put a nice flashy play, on the court as well. It seems like his shooting ability is pretty nice as well. And again, I think that's where he gets his Jeremy Grant, type of comparison as well, where in terms of a guy who can, guard the power forward and small forward, but be a nice shooter, it seems like you can almost slot this guy in as a role player, or maybe potentially down the line try and see if he could become a shot creator. I think right now that is kind of the dream, to see if he could become a good shot creator in the league. But I think what a lot of people are saying is right now this is the type of dude who could be maybe an all-star type of role player. And what I mean by that is, I think Andrew Wiggins is the perfect example. He's not the best player on his team. In fact, he's seen as by a role player by some, but almost too, good to be recognized as that. And that's what happened to Andrew Wiggins. He was so good at being an elite role player that he became an all-star and an all-star starter. And I think this is what could happen with this type of guy. I feel like he'd be a really awesome Jonathan Isaac type of replacement who they unfortunately haven't really had the services of due to all the injuries that guy has unfortunately had in the last couple of years of his career. I think they will definitely lose him. He'll probably leave for a fresh start or something like that. And you bring in a dude like Taylor Hendricks who can really kind of replace everything that Jonathan Isaac did in those really nice couple of games that he played for the Magic this season. He also fits really well into this team as they don't have a lot of forwards at the moment other than Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner. They're not really developing, I think, anyone else there. And if they keep all their guards and all of that type of stuff and maybe sign a center and bring Taylor Hendricks off, maybe to start off the bench and, do that, I think you're going to look at a really, really nice, solid team. And I just think he kind of fits what the Orlando Magic are really looking for right now. Pick 11, we actually have the Toronto Raptors, who have definitely had a really interesting season. I feel like this could honestly be one of those seasons that's kind of put as a best perfect example of, going a step backwards to take 2 steps forward. And at this pick, I think they've actually got a player that's really, really nice and has fallen directly into their lap in this mock draft that I've done. And that's actually going to be Cason Wallace. Now, I think Cason Wallace is actually a really, really special player who honestly just fits exactly what the Toronto Raptors seem to look for when they're looking for, a player to not only draft, but a player to actually fit into their system that's kind of already given away what he's good at, which is, of course, defense. But this comparison is just absolutely awesome and something that I can definitely see really working for the Toronto Raptors. And he's actually being compared to Jrue Holiday, who we know is one of the best defenders in the NBA. Some believe is the best defender in the NBA, and I think he will potentially finish top 3 nearly in defensive player of the year so far in 2023. It's an absolutely awesome pick for the Toronto Raptors. It's being said that he's a productive scorer that can create his own shot. He's very capable of potentially becoming a very consistent 3-point threat, as well as being able to stretch the floor from all parts of the court and being really nice as a catch and shoot type of player. He's also a really nice ball handler, but he definitely does need to work on his left-hand dribble, it's being said. And it's also kind of said that he can potentially switch from the 1 and the 2 with quite ease and comfort as well. He's a 6'3" point guard who, again, really does have that Jrue Holiday type of mold where he's a pretty decent scorer, pretty decent playmaker, but most of all, this guy is an absolute threat when it does come to being a good defender. And I just think this absolutely fits into exactly what the Toronto Raptors are looking for, because if we actually take a look at their team right now, we're not entirely too sure if Fred VanVleet will be staying. I've heard words that Toronto wouldn't even mind if he does leave. I'm not too sure what everyone's opinions are going to be on that, but he doesn't exactly fit the system that they're trying to do in Toronto. I also believe that the Toronto Raptors' long-term plan is to potentially have Scotty Barnes run as a bit of a point forward. We know he could definitely do that really, really well in college, and they have experimented with it a couple of times since he has been in the NBA. But I have a feeling if they go and get a dude like Cason Wallace, who they say to him, hey, you're a pretty decent playmaker, you're a pretty decent scorer, but you don't have to really rely on anything with that on our team. All you gotta do is rely on as being the best defender you possibly can, and then all the other things will come. I think that will be an absolute perfect fit for the Toronto Raptors. Like, just imagine being able to have Cason Wallace and, Scotty Barnes potentially share the ball and run the point guard duties. I think it'd be a really awesome thing. And if you bring him in, let's just say Van Vliet maybe goes, or something like this type of situation happens, they could legitimately have a starting five that looks like Wallace at the 1, potentially Barnes at the 2, Anunoby at the 3, Siakam at the 4, and Poeltl at the 5. Jeez, that would be probably the best defensive starting 5 in the league. And if you're wondering, well, where's the scoring gonna come from? Because you'd be relying on Pascal Siakam quite a bit. We know that Anunoby has really been wanting to be a big shot creator on a team for quite a bit, and I think he'd be able to step into that. Not just that, you've got a couple of really, really awesome scorers off the bench to really help this team. I definitely don't think it would be a bad idea at all to maybe go for a guy like Cason Wallace at that point guard position. And again, Gary Trent off the bench, add that scoring. Yeah, it'd definitely be a really scary thing to go against that starting 5. Not only defensively, but I think there's a lot of potential offensively as well. And that's honestly just the ultimate scary threat about this. So having Cason Wallace drop to them with that 11th overall pick is kind of just a match made in heaven for them. Now I'm going to be moving on to the 12th overall pick right now, where I do of course have the Utah Jazz. And the Utah Jazz are a really interesting team because they have one of my all-time favorite players in the NBA right now in Lauri Markkanen, who I think was a very big catalyst to actually helping the Cleveland Cavaliers be kind of what they are right now. And he has grown into being a really awesome all-star. You know, they've got a bunch of other really nice young players here and there as well, who I'm sure are probably going to be all-stars very soon. But in saying this, they don't exactly have, I think, the greatest guard depth anymore, and I definitely think they're going to be wanting to try and improve on that through this draft. So it's, I think, a pretty good thing for them, because it's not only a best player situation, but it happens that the best players that are going right now happen to fill a positional need that I genuinely think the Utah Jazz have. And that is, of course, finding a new guard. So with this 12th overall pick, I will have them selecting Keyonte George, who I think is probably going to be one of the steals potentially from this draft. There's a lot of, I think reports saying that Keyonte George could 100% go like pick 8, pick 9, but again, because some of the teams that I've had picking earlier don't really need a shooting guard like him, he's managed to fall to the pick number 12, and that's what Utah have right now. And I think he's a very special player who could definitely help them out quite a bit. For example, on the offensive end, he's really being compared to a Bradley Beal, just a really excellent shot creator who could become an all-star doing that one day. Of course, as well, potentially on the defensive end, a three-point aspect, even being Eric Gordon, who has almost gone quite underrated for most of his career. I feel like Eric Gordon has had a lot of injuries in his career, but I remember a time where I think it was the 2019 playoffs or so, where there was a stat that actually said that the Houston Rockets' second best player on the court, other than James Harden, was not Chris Paul, it wasn't Clint Capella, it wasn't PJ Tucker, it was actually Eric Gordon, because his defensive efficiency and three-point shooting, all of the above, was just so amazing in those playoffs. So to be able to be compared to a guy like Eric Gordon and Bradley Beal is just really good for Keyonte George. If we're going to move on from his comparisons now, Keyonte George is a 6'4" shooting guard who has a really nice knacked ability on the scoring and, kind of being able to shoot really well, whether it's from the catch and shoot or the shot creation. He's also a really, really fast guy who just seems to be able to outrun those defenders, and he's just kind of being labeled as a natural born bucket is what a lot of websites are calling this guy. Now, of course, there are some downsides to him. It's being said that he doesn't really have elite blow-by speed or really an elite first step for that much, and he can sometimes not be very crafty with his ball handling. But again, even though that is a bit of a concern in the NBA, especially considering this is the type of competition where you kind of have to be clever with how you handle the ball so you can score, I think as time will go, he can definitely, you know, be able to, I think, learn that and kind of judge how the NBA game is played, and therefore, quickly after that, I think his ball movement and whatnot will probably improve. It's also being said that he has a really nice mid-range jumper, nice three-point shot, and he's really good at getting to the rim and scoring through contact. So this is just a really awesome type of scorer who could maybe one day, I think, develop and be a solid player like Eric Gordon on the defensive type of end. I just think his true shooting will be something that could be really kind of looked at as a spectacle in the NBA, because if he gets his shot creation going and he can do that somewhat efficiently, it would be a really nice, you know, thing to maybe see. Again, in saying that, his defense might not be near that Eric Gordon type of level thus far. It is being said that he's a very pesky on-ball defender who gives a good effort and takes the task personally. He might not be big on steals and blocks, but he can definitely hold his own against the 1 and 2. So realistically, this just kind of fits into what Utah need, because even though I don't think they have a future point guard and shooting guard just yet, I mean, there's a lot of question marks still on players like Colin Sexton. I think he's probably going to be more of a six-man down the line. I do think bringing in a player like Keyonte George to maybe be your future starting shooting guard and putting him alongside Markkanen and Kessler, it definitely makes a lot of sense to me. And I think some people might honestly see this as one of the steals of my mock draft thus far. I think this is a really good move for the Utah Jazz. And not only is he best available, but he also fits a positional need that they kind of need to tick off and, you know, get that kind of down, because this team could be seriously good if they, you know, got some guards back. I mean, when they had Mike Conley and whatnot, they were playing some really good basketball, but they've dropped off a little bit, and I think that might be solely due to the fact that their guard depth is a little bit lacking. But yeah, Keyonte George kind of answers some of their problems, and he could be a very nice long-term prospect. Now, with the 13th overall pick, I have OKC, and there was a lot of players to, you know, take with this team. Like, they've got a really, really nice starting five, I think, going into the future. But with this pick, I decided to take a player who I think was more of a positional need rather than necessarily best available. But that's actually being Kyle Filipowski, who I think would make a whole lot of sense for this Oklahoma City Thunder team, as they do kind of lack, I think, if anything, on that center position, and even the power forward, really. I mean, Jalen Williams has played there for the majority of the season. Is he a natural born power forward? I'm not exactly too sure. I think a lot of people had him more of playing the small forward type of position, but Kyle Filipowski can definitely not only play center, but can play power forward, which is pretty extraordinary for a dude who's 7 foot. I've seen some people compare this guy to a bit of a Karl Anthony Towns. Now, I'm not too sure how much I like that. I guess they play similar, but I think in terms of, you know, dominating in the paint and, you know, I think the body build and whatnot isn't quite like Karl Anthony Towns was in his prime just yet. There is still a big chance that this guy could potentially develop maybe into being something very special in the NBA. It's being said that he's a pretty slick ball handler, especially for his height. He's one of those 7-footers that also has a really nice passing ability and can space the floor extremely well. It's also said that he has a bit of point forward type of skills, and that's what I kind of mean. I don't think Karl Anthony Towns has necessarily shown that in his career. I think Cat's more of a guy who dominates in the paint while also having an extremely good 3-point jumper. Again, Cat might not be able to as much now, but back in Cat's prime, like a couple years ago, I think people forget how dominant he could be in the paint. Yeah, this Kyle Filipowski guy definitely seems to be a bit better with the ball and being able to be a little bit of a point forward even at times, which, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see if that could maybe translate to the NBA. He does have the point forward skills. Will he be able to be a point forward? probably not in the NBA, but again, the fact this dude is 7 foot and can shoot threes really consistently and has a really nice pass on him and can space the floor and all that type of stuff is definitely something that I think people are not looking at, enough. Like, we've seen the more Nikola Jokic type of guys who just have the ability to spread the floor and pass the ball extremely well, but just being able to shoot threes. I think that's what I would liken Kyle Filipowski more to being more of like a Nikola Jokic and how he kind of plays his game with a bit of point forward skills but can shoot the three ball. Again, Jokic has never necessarily been known as like I think a point forward. He's obviously a center, but he definitely has like those traits of being an extremely good passer. I mean, this guy is one of the best, if not the best passer, quite possibly in the NBA. And you don't see people calling him a point forward, obviously, because the way he plays his basketball, he's been kind of, turned into a center on the NBA level. And I think that's maybe what will happen to Kyle Filipowski. I don't think he's going to really come into the NBA and be this power forward who, can potentially have the ball and potentially pass consistently all the time. I think there'll be traits of him having really good passes and, spreading the floor, maybe similar to an Alfred Şengün who gets better and better over time as well. But I definitely feel like he's going to play that center position, I think, more than the power forward maybe in the NBA. But just kind of the theory that I have that OKC could legitimately have him and Chet starting in that same lineup would be, I think, really, really cool. Chet's a bit different in my eyes, where I'm not too sure. I think he kind of fits in that weird mold that Filipowski does as well, where he almost is like a power forward / center as well. And I think that having both of them on the court would be a really, really interesting thing, as they could both not only switch on to the power forward, but also switch on to the center position. Both can also hit the three ball and have a really nice passing ability. So it would be a really awesome thing. Of course, Chet will be the more natural, better shot creator. But yeah, having those five, with Josh Giddey, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, maybe Lou Dort or Jalen Williams at the small forward. I think Filipowski and Holmgren swapping as the power forward / center duo. Literally everyone on that team can pass the ball. Everyone can shoot pretty much. I think everyone can help on the defensive side of the ball as well. I just think it would actually be a really nice player to maybe see come into this team. I'm not exactly too sure. Again, websites have him listed as power forward and a lot of scouting reports do as well. But yeah, I think going into the NBA, he might play minutes at power forward, but I see this dude maybe playing some center minutes quite a fair bit as well. But I'm not too sure. He could definitely turn into how Larry Markkinen is a 6'11", 7 foot guy, but can literally guard small forward. If Filipowski can do that, then geez, the NBA better watch out. But I think his first couple years, he'll be a bit of a power forward / center, I think, for the time being. But I guess we'll have to wait and see how that kind of does unfold down the line as well. Now, with the 14th overall pick, this was a little bit of a harder pick to kind of do, because at the time of making this video, the Dallas Mavericks have fallen all the way to pick 14. How long they'll be there for, I'm not exactly too sure. They haven't really done that well in recent games, which definitely does suck to see, because I actually kind of like Luka and Kyrie playing together. I'm not going to lie. Even though I don't really think it will probably work long term, I don't know why. It's just something inside makes me want it to work. I don't really know, and I'm going to be basing this video off the assumption that Kyrie Irving will be re-signing with Dallas, which I'm not exactly too sure if he will. So I probably won't be drafting a guard here. So with this kind of 14th overall pick, I went more of the forward type of direction, where I actually am taking a 6'7" / 6'8" small forward in Jett Howard from Michigan, who I actually think would be a really nice player to put alongside Luka and Kyrie. There's only 3 really, I think, established players on this Dallas team who I think will 100% be starting next season. And that is, of course, Kyrie, Luka, and Josh Green. I'm a very big Josh Green fan. I think they should 100% have him as the future starting small forward. And he gets better and better every year. He plays really nice defense and can shoot the ball and doesn't need the ball to be effective. So I think he'd be really good. And I think Jett Howard kind of fits in the same mold as a guy you can maybe play as a, not necessarily small ball power forward, he's 6'8", but a guy who not necessarily as good defensively yet, but can maybe translate in the NBA. And I think you can definitely put him at that power forward position maybe. Doesn't have to start there, he can come off the bench and just play forward minutes, but I actually think Jett Howard makes a lot of sense for this team, considering he is a really, really good catch and shoot player. It's being said that he actually excels in catch and shoot situations, which is just really awesome for this Dallas Mavericks team, and it's exactly what they need. Last thing they need is another guy to take the ball off Kyrie or Luka Doncic, so bringing in a dude like Jett Howard to come in who can just, sit in the corner and whatnot and catch and shoot would be a really awesome decision for them. It's also being said that he's just a really nice, talented scorer who not only can play small forward and power forward, but can also go to that shooting guard position as a bit of a more taller player. His main trait is he's just really, really good at being an off-ball guard as well. When he does need to be, or an off-ball forward, when he does need to, potentially shot create, he has known that he can do that quite well too. And I definitely think, if you're gonna put a guy with Luka and Kyrie, maybe if one of them gets injured and you're looking for a dude to shot create here and there, maybe you're looking at a guy like Jett Howard to stand up and do that. But for the time being, if we're gonna say that Kyrie and Luka are fully healthy, which touch wood for them, that's hopefully gonna be the case, then having a dude like Jett Howard who can, switch from the 2 to the 4, not only on defense, but can come in and just not rely, not be relied on to shot create, but relied on to catch and shoot, I think just works perfectly for what Kyrie and Luka are trying to do, in the NBA. Again, Josh Green is the perfect example of the mold that they're trying to create right there, and I think he works really well for Dallas. But again, Jett Howard is a similar type of guy who can be a really, really efficient catch and shoot type of guy who can maybe switch from 2 to 4, while also potentially having the potential down the road at being a really nice shot creator. I think that just makes sense for where Dallas are sitting and the situation that they are in to, of course, go for it. And worst case scenario, let's just say Kyrie does leave in free agency and you go back to Luka at the 1, then even having a prospect of Luka at the 1, Josh Green at the 2, and Jett Howard at the 3 is also a scary thing. Like, imagine Luka just passing it off to these really, really efficient catch and shoot type of guys who don't need the ball to, be able to score efficiently all the time. You do that, and then of course Luka can go back to defending the 1, and you got these 2 really capable wings to just go out and guard the small forward, go out and guard the shooting guard. That would just be a really good situation as well, even if Kyrie, does decide to leave. But again, I think he could stay. Will he? I'm not exactly too sure, but even if he does stay, or even if he goes, I still think this is the pick to make. He is a player who has a lot of potential down the line as well to just be a really solid player. And if he kind of converts to the NBA level, which I know some people are saying he definitely can, then yeah, you're already on another step forward to, I think, creating a championship team with Kyrie and Luka. Putting dudes around them like Jett Howard, like Josh Green, is the steps that you need to take to win a championship. Again, you do that, you bring in maybe some defenders off the bench and whatnot, some actual defensive center, and you've probably got a way, way, way better team. So again, there's a couple things they need to do, which I think they will. They've usually got a pretty decent management, and I think they might fix a lot of the stuff and correct them in free agency in the draft. But yeah, I think drafting a guy like Jett Howard with the 14th overall pick just makes a whole lot of sense for their franchise and their future. Of course, with the 15th overall pick, it's actually supposed to go to Minnesota. That's where they sit on the NBA standings right now. But we know that they actually gave their pick up to Utah, which is why, you know, I've got them going. That was, of course, in the Rudy Gobert trade and whatnot. So, again, these will be kind of course, being based off where the teams are sitting on the standings right now. And, of course, this could very much change. There are a couple of games, you know, left to go and whatnot, but hopefully it should pretty much stay very close to what I've got going on right now. But with the 15th overall pick, we do have the Utah Jazz from the Minnesota Timberwolves. And with this pick, I've actually got them selecting a player who I think would be really beneficial for their team in Nick Smith Jr., who I think makes a whole lot of sense. I previously had them selecting Keyonte George with their own pick, who was, of course, going to be a shooting guard in this draft. And again, he has a lot of really nice potential that can help the Utah Jazz out. And it's just a big thing right now where the Jazz really need some guards. And I genuinely think with their, you know, first pick they've got, they can find their shooting guard. But with the next one, I think they can find their point guard in Nick Smith, who I guess has been kind of talked about being more of a combo guard so far. But I definitely feel like he has a lot of really nice point guard abilities in him and could definitely start there in the long-term future. He's a 6'4", 6'5" type of guy who is also really, really lanky and long. It feels kind of awkward to say that about a man, but this dude is 6'9" and has a really nice three-point jumper that's really smooth. There's only a couple of knocks on his game so far, as his frame isn't exactly that great, and it does look like he needs to add quite a bit more weight, especially if he wants to fit into, you know, the NBA. So that can definitely be a rough start for him if he doesn't do that. But I think as time will go on, it will definitely work out. He's a bit more of a project type of player in terms of that. Doesn't exactly have that NBA built body yet. But if you get him in with some trainers and get that diet going, he could be a really, you know, nice player in terms of a guy who still needs to develop, though. He's also been said that he's battled some knee issues in the past, which has slowed him down, which isn't exactly that great, but it is said that he's lights out with the ball, a pretty, you know, nice defender, and it is kind of being compared to a bit of Jaden Ivey here and there as well, I've been hearing, which is an absolutely awesome comparison. I really like Jaden Ivey as a player. I think he's helped the Detroit Pistons out quite a bit and has been pretty serviceable for them so far. He's the type of guy who can definitely score at that point guard position, but he can guard the shooting guard and guard the point guard while still being a pretty effective playmaker or so. And I think this will come in handy with Utah. If you partner him up with Keyonte George, you've basically got two 6'4", 6'5", you know, guards who I think are going to feed off each other really well defensively. They're both pretty good scorers who have decent jump shots. I just think, yeah, Nick Smith, he probably doesn't have that NBA built ready frame yet, and definitely, you know, has had his injury issues, but I think would be a nice player for this Utah Jazz team to probably select. With the 16th overall pick, though, I do have the Atlanta Hawks, and the Atlanta Hawks are a bit more of a challenge, I think. There's definitely a couple things they need, but yeah, I'm not too sure if they can really fix a lot of this with the draft. So I wouldn't be surprised if they traded this pick, but at the time making this video, I've just kind of got them best available right now, which is Jordan Hawkins, I believe, who's a 6'5" shooting guard. It's being said that Hawkins is one of the better three-point shooters in the draft class, who has incredibly great, you know, movement around that three-point line and knows how to get open, and he's really good at coming off screens. I just figured he would kind of fit well with a DeJounte Murray or a Trae Young. I think what they're going to be going for if they do take a draft player is a bit of maybe that type of role player that can fit what Kevin Huerter kind of left. I feel like Kevin Huerter low-key left a bigger hole than what the Atlanta Hawks were intending. I think they thought he wasn't as important to their team, and they kind of let him walk. Well, they did trade him, I believe, to the Sacramento Kings, but they would have let him walk anyway and whatnot. So I think losing a really good three-point shooter like Huerter, who can feed off a guy like Trae Young and, you know, DeJounte Murray definitely hurt them quite a bit. And if you bring in a dude like Jordan Hawkins, I think that's a pretty decent idea as well. The other thing is Jordan Hawkins is being said that he actually might have a potential to be a really nice shot creator one day, which I also feel like helps. If DeJounte Murray's shot creating and shooting isn't going that well on a particular night, which has been a bit of a theme so far this season, it's really just left to Trae Young to kind of do everything, and they don't exactly have a high profile scorer off, you know, the bench. So I feel like if you bring in a dude like Jordan Hawkins, he might be able to get good minutes as a shooting guard or small forward, where if you need him to be a 3-point shooter, 3-and-D type of guy, he can do it. But if you need him to be a scorer, he might be able to do that part as well. In fact, one of the comparisons he's actually been listed to was Anthony Simons. It's being said that he's really got a good dribble drive game, where he can potentially create his own shots. He's got a really nice, solid defensive game as well. It's just kind of said that his frame isn't exactly great, and he kind of follows a similar thing where his body might not be NBA ready yet, similar to the previous pick that I had in Nick Smith Jr. There's some people saying as well that teams might like to slot him into being a small forward in the NBA, and being 6'5" is a very big concern. That's pretty small for your prototypical type of small forward, and we've seen guys like Isaac Okoro kind of struggle with that in the NBA, where an Isaac Okoro could easily go and lock up Jalen Brunson. He can go and lock up well, I hope that I haven't said that too soon, because the Cavs play the Knicks in the playoffs soon, so I'm not sure about that. But also, Isaac Okoro has been known he can be able to lock up a dude like Bradley Beal, but he's struggled on guys like LeBron James and whatnot in his NBA career, just being too small at that small forward position. Will Jordan Hawkins kind of fit in that same mold that Okoro has struggled with? I'm not sure. Okoro still has a lot of time to, resurrect it, and he's been much better defensively in that kind of regard, especially this season. His 3-point jump shot's finally starting to crack down. I think Jordan Hawkins might see a similar struggle, but if he gets a lot of shooting guard minutes, I'm sure him and Bogdan Bogdanovic can maybe tackle, how that shooting guard, small forward, wing type of minutes. But yeah, it's definitely an issue. We know Bogey has struggled with getting on the court, so that's another thing. You bring in Hawkins, he kind of fills in for the minutes that Bogdanovic kind of lacks with. So yeah, it's going to be a really interesting thing to see how this, of course, does go. And I do think it's a smart pick by the Atlanta Hawks, but I wouldn't be surprised if they traded this pick on as well. Now, with the 17th overall pick, we do have the Los Angeles Lakers, and I'm not going to lie, I always manage to forget how to say this guy's name, and I don't know, the pronunciation, I've heard 800 different people pronounce this guy's name different, but I'm probably going to pronounce his name different 800 different times in this video as well. But that is Rayan Rupert, who is actually coming out of the New Zealand Breakers in the NBL. I definitely know I didn't say that right then. I feel like I really didn't. It's very upsetting, but just live with it, guys. But yeah, I'm just going to be calling him Rupert for this video because I've already forgotten how to say his first name. But anyway, I've watched this guy in the NBL, and he's a really, really nice player. As a guy who is from Australia myself, it's really good that a lot of these players are coming from their countries and playing in the NBL to play for these teams. And yeah, we've seen Ousmane Dieng from the Oklahoma City Thunder be quite successful in doing this. He actually previously played for the New Zealand Breakers as well, and ended up getting drafted in the top 15 picks, I believe, to Oklahoma. I think Rupert, another guy who's also from France, who also plays for the New Zealand Breakers, I feel like he's going to try and imitate what Dieng has been able to do and accomplish, and that's why I think he went to New Zealand and whatnot. He's also been compared to another French guy in Nicolas Batum, who has had a very great career and an underrated one, I think. A lot of this guy was, for most of his career, was called an overpaid player, especially on the Charlotte Hornets, but now he's been able to kind of carve out a 10 or so year career that looks like it's going to go on for a long more time, and he's been a very solid contributor for this Los Angeles Clippers team, and I actually like this comparison. You're looking at a dude who's much taller, who can definitely smash out those 3-point shots, really kind of switch from 1 to 4, which is a thing that people don't talk about in Batum's game enough. He's not really the fastest guy out there, but he literally played shooting guard on the Charlotte Hornets and then went over to the Los Angeles Clippers and played power forward. From what I'm hearing, Rupert definitely has the ability where he can maybe be able to do that as well. So his defensive game, and I think utility-wise, he's a very, very good player to potentially have on that court. He definitely embraces that positionless basketball type of thing, and he adds some height into a Los Angeles Lakers team that definitely struggled for height, especially in this last season or so. Again, I think it makes a whole lot of sense if you put a 3-point shooter alongside LeBron who can switch from 1 to 4 any given time. It's going to be serviceable. It's just very obvious, and I think this is what he's going to like. Now, I believe he's a bit smaller than Jang. He is 6'7", and he is listed as a shooting guard. But hey, as I said earlier, his comparison is Batum. Batum's a dude who was a shooting guard that skipped the small forward process and went straight to being a power forward. It's being said that Rupert is a prototypical 3-and-D wing with great length and a lot of versatility. He slides his feet well and has great lateral movement and overall agility. His quick hands and get a lot of deflections and steal. He's not yet a very consistent 3-point shooter, but has the ability to be a nice floor spacer in the next level. It's also said that his playmaking abilities are a bit underrated, and he definitely has some untapped potential in potentially initiating an offense. So yeah, I think this is a really good idea to add to the Los Angeles Lakers. This is a smart move, and I think it's someone who can fit well with LeBron and whatnot. It's a taller wing type of player who can add that defense that the Los Angeles Lakers desperately struggled with for a lot of this most recent season. But most importantly, if his 3-point shooting stays consistent, who wouldn't want a 6'7", 3-and-D type of wing who maybe has the potential to move on to the small forward, power forward type of, position? Could it happen? I'm not exactly too sure. I think there's a lot of opportunity for this, and I think the Los Angeles Lakers will be keeping a very close eye on him. Now, moving on, of course, from this, we're going to be going to the Houston Rockets at pick 18, who have Jalen Hood-Schifino, who I have them taking. This was an extremely hard pick because I've already got the Houston Rockets taking a point guard, obviously, with the best point guard we know in the draft in Scoot Henderson. But I saw Jalen Hood-Schifino on this list and I was thinking, damn, he can't fall down any further. I just can't let it happen. He's too good of a player. And the reality is he's not your prototypical type of point guard. He's actually 6'6". So I definitely feel like he could be a shooting guard, small forward in the NBA as well. And it's even being said he's definitely more of a combo guard than just your strict point guard. But he definitely, I think, has preferred to play there in the most recent time. The reality is, though, the Houston Rockets are not really in a situation to be picky. Look, 2 point guards in the one draft is probably not great. But if you draft Scoot Henderson, you're probably going to be moving on from Kevin Porter Jr. And I don't think they really have a good backup point guard anyway. So if you get in Hood-Schifino, the reality is you're bringing in a 6'6" dude who not only can play point guard, but he can play backup shooting guard minutes. He can play backup small forward minutes as well. And he's best available. It's being said that he's a rock solid guard who's best playing on the ball, facilitating the offense and being a glue guy on both ends of the court. He's being said that he's a really good defender and a fierce competitor, something that the Houston Rockets don't exactly have a lot of. So if you add this guy, you can bring in a dude who can guard 1 through 3, really good defense, and could maybe control the offense when, off the bench, and when Scoot Henderson, of course, goes on that bench. It's being said that he's an extremely aggressive defender who takes pride in shutting down opposing guards. His defensive traits and abilities should translate extremely well to the NBA. It's said that he has a pretty good looking jump shot, but he has a bit of inconsistency hitting that 3 ball and is a below average free throw shooter as well. It's definitely his biggest area of growth in the league, being said that he needs to get that 3-point shot consistent and definitely needs to start hitting those free throws. But I think if you're the Houston Rockets and you have a lot of time to experiment, if you get lucky enough to have Scoot Henderson as your new starting point guard, he can definitely run the offense there. But then, of course, you can also bring, I think, Hood-Schifino potentially off the bench to do his thing, get the ball in his hands, and of course, he can help defend. Look, he's probably not going to be the greatest off-ball, type of guy, just because he can't really shoot that well. But there's still a way where he and Scoot Henderson, I think, could also share the court together. Look, he and Scoot Henderson could play, I think, a bit of a double guard system, definitely at a lot of times anyway. You'll have Scoot Henderson defending the 1, and of course, Hood-Schifino defending the 2. But then on offense, you might have the ball more in Hood-Schifino's type of hands because he can play make really well. And then you might have Henderson play a bit of off ball when he's getting tired and whatnot. And I think Henderson definitely has the ability to do that as well, being an extremely athletic shot creator who can definitely hit a catch and shoot shot or two. So this makes a whole lot of sense in my opinion for the Houston Rockets to do. I don't think just because you've already drafted a guard that it should shy you away from drafting another point guard. I think that this guy fits in with what the Houston Rockets need. They desperately need defense and playmaking and just a floor general in general. I think this just makes a really, good idea. And yeah, look, you might get some critics and you might get some eye rolls. You've drafted 2 point guards. But hey, I actually really like this idea in my opinion. Now, moving on to pick 19, we actually have the Golden State Warriors, who I'm not exactly too sure if they're going to be really drafting a player with this pick as well. They definitely could, I think, trade this pick. I mean, it would make a lot of sense, but in saying all that, I've decided to kind of take a player who I think fits their system in Brice Sensabaugh, who I just think makes a whole lot of sense for this team as well. You're looking at a 6'6" wing player who's a really nice 3-point shooter who, let's be honest here, the Golden State Warriors absolutely love. They created the 6'6" extremely good 3-point shooter in Klay Thompson, of course. It's being said that Sensabaugh is an extremely good 6'6" combo forward with very high skill level. He's a walking bucket who's really able to create his own shot, but is extremely good from the mid-range and can definitely shoot a 3 here and there. It's being said that he has a solid NBA type of build and has a ton of natural power. He has advanced ball handling for his size and is very quick on the first step, and he also excels at scoring through contact. It's being said that one of the best things about his game though is he has a beautiful jump shot and is extremely accurate. I just think, yeah, if you hear that and you're the Golden State Warriors, you think twice about maybe trading this pick. You're probably sitting there and you're like, damn, we got a guy here who could come in and really do what our system has been able to do so greatly for so many years right now. And that's come in, shoot threes, be a decent shot creator, but just space the floor out. Like, there's a reality. If this dude, his defense seems to be okay, but because he's such a big body and whatnot, I have no worries or trouble with this Ohio State player translating his game into the NBA. My theory is, who says you couldn't see a time where you maybe see something real small ball of Steph Curry at point guard, Klay Thompson at shooting guard, DiVincenzo like at small forward, of course, their new Ohio State player at power forward maybe, and a Draymond Green at center. Could you imagine Draymond Green playmaking to these 4 sharpshooters who are all capable of defending their own player, switching onto a different player here and there? Maybe not Steph, but he makes up for it in other things, I promise. But being able to switch from like basically 2 from 4, which a lot of these guys can do, and just hit that 3 ball, whether it's, or just shot create or on the catch and shoot, whatever it is. Whereas the mid-range, the 3-point shot, or even from the free throw line, all of these guys can do exactly that. This is kind of just a match made in heaven for the Golden State Warriors. I definitely think if you're the Warriors and you see this guy sitting on the draft board, you're thinking, look, we could maybe trade him for another role player like a Dante DiVincenzo, that 8 to 12 million type of player who could be a serviceable type of role player. We could maybe trade our pick for that type of player, or we could go and, you know, be a little bit, I think, risky and go and draft an Ohio State dude named Brice Sensabaugh at this pick, but he just fits in with our system. Get him in, see how he goes, and I think that's what the Warriors could definitely decide to do. He won't start, of course. They've still got Wiggins. I still think they're going to bring back Draymond in free agency. I know it's a big consensus. He's probably going to leave, but Draymond's just done so much for this team. He's so crucial to the way players like Steph Curry and whatnot play. I think you got to keep Draymond in the team, hopefully, for them. And this just makes a whole lot of sense, in my opinion. And look, you bring in this type of dude, he might not be able to start just yet, because you've already got so many good players starting here and there. But my way of thinking is, you can bring this dude off the bench. He can play the 10 to 20 minutes per night off the bench, give you those serviceable minutes, hopefully accurate three-point shooting, nice mid-range shot, just space the floor out in general. And I think this makes a whole lot of sense if you're a Golden State Warriors fan and from a Golden State Warriors point of view. Now, moving on to the last pick of this, what I've got going on right now, I've got the Miami Heat, and I will actually be selecting Noah Clowney, who has definitely been kind of said to be a bit more of a project player, I think, going into this draft. But if we're looking at Noah Clowney, I actually think he really fits in a lot of what that Miami Heat team needs, and that's just a power forward. I mean, they've been playing Kevin Love at power forward, and they've had a bit more success. I think Kevin Love actually had a 20-point or so game the other day, which was pretty impressive for the old fella, and he's actually looking a lot better than he did with the Cleveland Cavaliers, this first half of the season. He's looking a bit better with this Miami Heat team right now, but I think they need a power forward like Noah Clowney who can just come in and take some of the heat off Bam Adebayo. I don't think it's truly appreciated how underrated Bam Adebayo is right now, because Bam has to do so much. The Miami Heat's backup centers are pretty bad. You got Dwayne Dedmon there, he's average. He's definitely just an average player. And you look at their power forward depth, for most of the season, they were playing one of the Martin brothers there, who's definitely not a power forward. Even though I really like him and I think he's a good player, he's a small forward. So they went out, got Kevin Love, but I think that's a bit of a short-term solution. I think Kevin Love next season will, hopefully for their sake, just be a nice role player off the bench. They desperately need to find their starting power forward. I think they can do it in free agency. I always thought they should have never let Jay Crowder walk. They let Crowder walk to bring in PJ Tucker. I thought that was a weird decision. Crowder went to Phoenix and played well there. Now he's at the Bucks. I think Crowder would be a cheap option who you could bring back to try and start. But if you want to bring in a younger dude, Noah Clowney actually would help. He's a 6'10" guy who's an extremely good rebounder, it looks like. So he'll be able to take, I think, a lot of the pressure off Bam Adebayo when it does come to rebounding here and there. It's being said that he's a pretty decent defender, but a really nice, solid shot blocker. Pretty good athletically and has a good motor. Can definitely, go the game there. His biggest pro, though, seems to be has a lot of potential of being a really good defensive type of rebounder. I think I would like to actually compare him to a bit of Jared Vanderbilt from the Los Angeles Lakers. A guy who's a pretty average shooter, but definitely makes up for it with his extremely good hustle and terrific defense, but can also get a really nice board and even play small ball center. I definitely think as Noah Clowney gets a little bit older and progresses his game, he could very much take this to the next level and I think help out this Miami Heat team. Some of the weaknesses it's being said, though, is that he's not a great ball handler and he can be kind of prone to the good old turnover here and there, which isn't great. He has sometimes that undisciplined defense by giving away a foul. But that's what I'm just saying. This guy's a bit more of a kind of a project player who could be very good in the long term. And then some people say that his shooting does need a bit of improvement. But my theory and the way that I'm thinking about this is if that you're the Miami Heat. You don't need a guy to be an extremely good shooter. You don't need a guy to be a good ball handler or anything like that. You just need a guy who can come in and help Bam Adebayo out. Give this guy a bit of a chill pill to not have to go, off every single game. A guy who can help out when it does come to rebounding. A guy who can help Bam guard the power forward and center position. A dude who can maybe switch from there and whatnot. And of course, just get the rebound and be good defensively. Of course, I do think the Heat need maybe another shooter or two, but they've still got players here and there like Martin and like Kevin Love now and like Hero who are really good shooters. I still think maybe adding a dude like a Jay Crowder would be a smart decision, so you don't have to start Noah Clowney just yet. But I don't think it would be the worst idea to give a dude like Noah Clowney, a young guy, a go at that starting power forward position where he can come help rebound, he can come help, of course, be really good defensively, which is what the Miami Heat system is known to be for quite a bit. But of course, just to develop alongside Bam Adebayo and just give the guy a hand, because Bam's next best option at that power forward and center position are Kevin Love and Dwayne Dedmon. Two dudes who are well past their prime and don't exactly move that great out there on the court. So bringing in a dude like Noah Clowney, I think actually makes a lot of sense and helps them out, especially in the long term. It's a positional pick that makes a lot of sense, and you're giving a young kid a go who has a lot of potential, in the league. You don't have to start him straight away. It's an option, but you could maybe bring in a dude like Jay Crowder, who you already know fits in with your team. He literally helps you guys get to a final series. Really good defensively, underrated defender, and a good three-point shooter. You can start him, maybe bring Clowney off the bench, and he can watch Jay Crowder and how he plays his game and maybe develop into something similar. With the 21st overall pick, I do actually have the Brooklyn Nets, and Brooklyn's an interesting team to draft from because I really don't know where they're going to be completely sitting in the 2023 offseason. They've got a lot of players that might be getting traded, players that might get, re-signed, players that might not get signed at all. So it's kind of hard to really go about it, considering there's probably going to be a lot of movement with this team. But to be honest, I kind of did somewhat just go half and half between best available and obviously I think what is possibly going to be the best fit for this team. And I think if the team lacks in anything, it's probably going to be forward depth, coming into the offseason and whatnot. So in saying that, I will of course have them drafting Leonard Miller at pick 21, who could have definitely gone higher. This guy is a really good prospect who I believe is from Canada, but actually played in the G League Ignite team. He is a 6'10" small forward who can also play power forward as well, with a 7'2" wingspan. Some really crazy stuff right there. It's being said that he's an extremely wiry and mobile 6'10" forward who can also handle the ball very, very well. He's transformed his game as well from not only just being somewhat as a, kind of ball handling wing to a very hard-nosed big forward who can rebound really well, defend really well, defend kind of all across the board and do all the dirty work, and really just kind of fits into, I think, what Brooklyn will be trying to add into this offseason. There is a con though, and the con seems to be that Miller's jump shot doesn't exactly look to be that great, and even though he can hit the three on the occasion, he does definitely need to improve it, and it's something he somewhat kind of lacks right now. But if you're looking at bringing in a dude who's 6'10", who can like switch 1 through 5, he seems to be that type of player that will be able to do that. An extremely tough guy who's very wiry, very kind of mobile, and with a 7'2" wingspan that's pretty lanky, and just it kind of seems like he has the attributes to really put everything together in the NBA and kind of build something I think really cool that could help the Brooklyn Nets out in the long term. Again, we really don't know what they're going to be doing with their depth. I think Royce O'Neal is going to be a free agent who possibly might leave. He might get a way nicer contract at a contending team. This Brooklyn Nets team probably won't be, I don't think, really contending as much next season. I think a couple players might leave, a couple players might get traded. And they might try and phase out some players very similar to how Utah kind of did. So I expect that to happen to like O'Neal. They'll still have Cam Johnson at that power forward position. I'm assuming he'll re-sign back. But yeah, if you lose O'Neal, you'd definitely be looking for a backup power forward. You'll have Bridges at that starting small forward as well. And I think other players like Joe Harris might be either free agents or definitely players the Nets might be looking to trade anyway. So either way, you're bringing in a dude who will probably be a backup forward, of course, to start off his career at pick 21. But a guy who might be able to, I think, translate and upgrade into potentially being a starting forward maybe one day in the NBA. And look, this Nets team could maybe even go for something super defensive where maybe even Bridges plays a lot of that too down the line. And you got him, Johnson, and potentially as well Miller, maybe all in that in a certain rotation at one time. It would be a really awesome thing to maybe see. But I think defensively, it would be cool to bring in a guy like Leonard Miller. Again, scoring is decent, but he's definitely going to need to focus and develop on that three-point shooting, because right now, hitting it on the occasion is not really good enough. They've already got a player who can't really shoot threes in Ben Simmons. But for a guy like pick 21, you look at him and you say, yeah, he's going to just come in and develop that game. And if he can do everything else really nice, then yeah, it would be a really cool player to maybe bring in. And yeah, it would make, I think, a lot of sense for this Brooklyn Nets team. So yeah, with pick number 21, I will be taking Leonard Miller to the Brooklyn Nets. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because the Brooklyn Nets actually have back-to-back picks. They also have pick 22. And with the 22nd pick, I kind of went a very similar type of formula that I did with, how they, of course, handled, Leonard Miller, who I had going at 21 and whatnot. I do still think that the forward/wing depth would be the biggest issue on this Nets team. They've already got Claxton, who's a dominant, I think, center in the league, who they don't really, I think they've got Sharp as their backup as well. I don't think they really need a center. You've got point guards, you've got Dinwiddie, and I'm assuming, I don't know if they're going to trade Simmons away, so you still got those two dudes. Yeah, I think you're bringing in a backup forward in Leonard Miller, but I think you'd also still like the flexibility of having a dude who, yes, can play small forward, but also can switch to that shooting guard position. So therefore, I've kind of actually decided to select Dariq Whitehead with this pick, and I just think this is a really, really good decision by the Nets if they go through with this guy. He's a 6'7" shooting guard / small forward. The really nice, I think, wing type of prospect that you would really like to have on an NBA team. There's a couple of issues though with Dariq Whitehead, where some websites actually have this guy at a different height. I'm not too sure why, but it just seems like these websites can't really decide what he is. I believe at Duke he did actually come in at 6'7", but I've seen websites have this guy at 6'4.5", 6'5", which isn't great if you want to play the small forward position. So it would be a really interesting thing to see what his official NBA height is going to be. But I think in terms of believing what the main evidence we've heard that this dude is 6'7", I think, yeah, you're looking at a guy who can very easily switch from that shooting guard to that small forward position. He's definitely done it a lot at Duke, especially this season. I think that's just a really obvious one. It's being said that he's one of the best wing prospects in the 2023 draft. He's a big-time athlete who is smooth in the open court and can play above the wing. He's got a solid size for a wing and all the athleticism you could hope for. He's developed into an athlete who was smooth in the open court, as I just said, can play above the rim, but can also be a really nice ability to have a good jump shot, an extremely consistent three-point threat. His shooting has improved so much, it's being said, and he has a really good work ethic and a determination that could potentially lead him into being a really, really good player as well. It's also said that he's a standout defender who can guard 1 through 3 and has a +4 wingspan. We're looking at a dude who has a wingspan of, I believe, basically nearly 7 foot, which is kind of just like crazy to think about the defensive ability and prospect you're kind of looking at with this guy. You're like, wow, you wouldn't be surprised if a team actually does have this guy, maybe even going a little bit higher. Now, again, automatically, if you're a good three-point shooter and you can defend the perimeter, you're already going to be a solid player probably in the NBA, who a lot of teams are, I think, going to be looking for and potentially wanting. It's being said that this guy can be your regular, really nice 3 and D type of player, but some believe he has the potential to even get better than the regular 3 and D type of player, and if improves and really does well in his, kind of workouts, could even jump from being pick 22, where I have him, and of course being a mid first round pick, like a pick 14, a pick 15 type of player. I've even seen some people compare this guy to Bradley Beal, which is just a really awesome comparison if you're him, and I think that could almost even knock up his draft value a little bit more, because look, as I said at the time of making this video, he's a 6'7" dude potentially. Some websites 6'5". I don't really know what's going on there. That can be a really consistent three-point shooter, but also be a really nice perimeter defender, but might have the potential to be a Bradley Beal type of player one day, where he's a nice shot creator, he gets that mid-range shot going, and he's not scared to have a mid-range shot. And I think if you're the Brooklyn Nets, what I would kind of compare him to right now is actually like a younger Mikal Bridges. And I just feel like if you were to bring in Dariq Whitehead and, of course, potentially Leonard Miller, right, I just can't imagine how defensively insane a starting 5 could one day look like, of like Spencer Dinwiddie at the 1, Bridges at the 2, Whitehead at the 3, Miller at the 4, and Claxton at the 5. That would, I don't know, man, something about that defensive ability at that 5. And if Bridges keeps becoming this shot creator that we know he can be, Dinwiddie's a terrific shot creator as well. You got shooters now like Whitehead there. I think Miller has to improve from 3, but he might have some offensive fundamentals anyway. You're looking at a team that's really good starting 5-wise on defense. And look, whether these guys might not start because they're going to be late first round picks anyway, but you're looking at guys who have the potential to start in the future. And look, Cam Johnson's going to be there as well, who's probably going to start. And look, I don't think they mind taking a backseat to him. He deserves his time to shine as well. It's going to be really interesting. This Brooklyn Nets team could become one of the best young teams, I think, in the NBA. And God, if Ben Simmons can be what he used to be, like even 3/4 of what he used to be back in Philadelphia, people just forget how this guy used to be one of the most dominant defenders in the league. Like, imagine if he played point guard and you had Bridges, Whitehead, Miller, and Claxton all in that starting 5. Yeah, no one's scoring on that team. That's just a realistic thing. But yeah, we know Ben Simmons is a long way to go. Now, I do hope that one day he can get to being what he used to, of course, be. Now, with the 23rd overall pick, we've got the Portland Trail Blazers, who I low-key feel like I've got them having one of the best drafts right now. I actually, again, had them, I believe it was the 7th pick or so, earlier on in the draft, where I actually had him taking Jarace Walker, who's a 6'7", 6'8" power forward type, Zion type of body, a really good player who can also shoot this and that. I think he fills in the power forward position that they desperately need. You probably move Grant to that small forward. The other thing I think they desperately need is a center. I've never been too much of a fan of Nurkic in recent time. I always feel like his body lets him down, which is really unfortunate. But with this 23rd overall pick, I figured if they can maybe keep Eubanks as just still on the team, because realistically, Eubanks started so many games because of, I think, how many injuries Nurkic just gets. But if you can have a 3rd string center who can develop into being a nice 2nd string, especially when, of Eubanks or even Nurkic go down, which just seems to always happen, I actually like them maybe taking Dereck Lively II out of Duke as well. The 2nd Duke player in a row. This Dereck Lively guy is a 7'2", really nice defender. I've heard 7 foot as well, but 7'2" is what some websites have him as, which is just insane, with a wingspan of 7'4" and above is absolutely insane. It's being said that he's got extremely good length and size, and what's better than that is he's actually got good mobility, so he kind of knows how to use it. It says that he's a game changer on the defensive end. He can alter and block a ton of shots. He has really quick feet and the agility to guard in space, and will become even more of an impactful defender as he fills out his frame and even puts some more weight on. His defensive game hasn't been that good, but has definitely blossomed over the last year, where he's now even shooting threes. So pretty much this dude is just like what Mo Bamba wants to be, it sounds like, because we know Mo Bamba hasn't exactly done what he probably should have in, kind of the NBA so far. And there's still time, I hope he does, but it seems like this is what he is kind of supposed to be, and that's this Dereck Lively guy who's been compared to a bit of a Willie Cauley-Stein with a jump shot. Back when Willie Cauley-Stein actually used to be a really solid player, I feel like people forget that he was actually pretty good on Sacramento. I think his body just got worn down over time. And Tyson Chandler as well with range is what I'm hearing. And those are two really solid players. Tyson Chandler actually had a really good career. And if you're telling me you're adding a Tyson Chandler with a 3-point jump shot, that's kind of pretty crazy. And you're looking at a Willie Cauley-Stein who was underrated for the most part in his Sacramento career. And you're adding a 3-point jump shot to him. That's kind of a pretty cool thing. And I think if you're the Portland Trail Blazers, you're filling out your depth now. Like, that's one of the big things the Trailblazers absolutely sucked with so far, in this season. Of course, it's over now, but they had no depth. Their depth just consistently suffered, and then they moved on Josh Hart to add some young depth pieces like Thibault and Reddish, who haven't done a whole lot in the team. I'm not sure if either of them will be back. They might get offers from different teams and whatnot. But you're looking at a situation where no matter what, they're going to have injuries to their centers. So that's just the decision they've made now by signing Nurkic to that long-term deal. I think, Eubanks is cool and all as a backup center, but he can't start 35 minutes every game that, Nurkic can't play. So you're bringing in a dude like, I think, Dereck Lively, who might even, separate that time. You might see Eubanks start to play the 25 minutes per game or so. Dereck Lively play the 23 when Nurkic gets injured and whatnot. And maybe a guy who's 7 foot to 7'2", hasn't officially been confirmed, with a really good, decent 3-point shot, who can block shots and whatnot. I think that's a pretty good idea if you're a Portland Trailblazers team. And now you add just a lot more height through this team in Jarace Walker and Lively. I think the defense improves as well by quite a bit. And I think this is a good decision. Then in free agency, you can go out and I think fill out your guards and whatnot and do all that type of stuff. And I think this makes a whole lot of sense in my opinion. I actually really, really like this by them. So with this pick, with the 23rd overall pick, I do have the Portland Trailblazers selecting Dereck Lively II. Now moving on to the Sacramento Kings at pick 24. This was a pick that I actually found kind of funny, that I've decided to take this player, but he kind of fits the position that they need, and they don't actually need a whole lot more just for this young core to keep developing. And I think a couple of the players to get better, maybe they might trade for another star eventually as well. I think they'll have the, abilities to do that by trading a player like Harrison Barnes and whatnot to somewhat match contracts. Not sure who that might be, but I actually think the only position they fully haven't got on lock is the forward position right now. You've got Murray there, Keegan Murray, who plays small forward, he plays power forward, he plays a bit of both. That's a really good player. But then you got Harrison Barnes, who I think it's not confirmed if he's going to come back and whatnot. We really don't know. And then look, their backup forwards are decent, but I'm just looking at it and I'm just thinking you could probably add another one here. I think it's pretty obvious that you might be able to do it. I think, look, there are guys there, as I just said, like Trey Lyles, but it can definitely get better. There's a lot of room for improvement, and that's why I got a dude who I think adds more to this team, and that's Chris Murray, who is the brother of Keegan Murray, very conveniently, a 6'8" power forward / small forward, pretty much the exact same frame and build nearly to his brother Keegan. very similar player, except we know Keegan is... I think Keegan has that all-star potential and will be potentially an all-star one day. I really like Keegan Murray's game. And then you're looking at, Chris Murray, who I think he probably won't be an all-star, but you're looking at a guy who's going to come in and probably be a really nice role player for this team, come off the bench, play the 15 minutes a night, whether it's at the small forward or the power forward position, be a pretty decent defender, but just start to hit that three ball. It's being said that he's the twin brother of Keegan Murray, but Chris is built with a pretty similar mold, like literally the exact same, but he's a pretty decent, efficient, offensive player who doesn't force issues or turnovers quite a bit. He's really good without the ball and puts himself in a pretty decent position to score. He's got his range downtown now and will continue to improve and grow when it does becoming a three-point shooter. He's got the nice tools to be a pretty nice versatile defender, and he's got really nice raw athleticism that could definitely come out in the NBA. And this is why I just think this is a smart pick. I think if you just want to bring in that backup forward, why not, of course, make this decision happen? Look, Keegan Murray starts now and does a terrific job as the power forward. And look, I'm not sure if Harrison Barnes, what his future is going to be like with this, I think Sacramento team. Will he come back? Probably. He probably will come back, but will it be in a sign and trade maybe to try and get an all-star? I think Sacramento have a lot they can work with. They've still got a lot of their future picks, and they can maybe make something happen. If not, imagine seeing Keegan Murray and Chris Murray in the same starting five one day. You got the power forward and the small forward. Both will just be interchangeable with that. They'll both look the exact same. You won't even know who is who. But I'm sure Keegan might play better. But who knows? Chris maybe has the potential to develop into being a really solid guy. A really solid role player who I think can help this team go relatively far. And yeah, I think this is a smart pick. And hey, he's already got the chemistry with his brother. And if they like his brother, you're bringing in a dude that's probably going to be relatively similar. Now, with the 25th overall pick, I do have the Memphis Grizzlies, who were by far the hardest pick to do thus far. Again, the only thing I think Memphis needs to do to get a whole lot better is maybe add another star. I don't think there really is much more to do. They've already got some of the best role players in the league. I think if you want to take that extra step, maybe adding a star small forward would be a really cool thing, or even a center. I'm not sure, hey, if things fall apart with Minnesota, maybe you could go after Karl Anthony Towns. I just think, oh my god, he'd be sick on this team. That would be having Desmond Bane, Cat, and Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson all work together. I just think Jaren Jackson does what Cat can't do. That would be the duo that they wanted Cat and Gobert to be. I feel like is what Jackson and Cat would actually be. So I'm not exactly too sure what's going to go on with this pick. This pick could definitely get traded and probably will. But for the sake of this video, I've kind of just got what I think they might need for the team. And that's just another scorer. And that would be just to go for another guard to come in and maybe help out. And I've actually got them taking Kobe Bufkin, who is a 6'4" combo guard who has been notoriously known for Michigan to be, I believe, a pretty decent scorer. So that's what I think Memphis should do. I still think they'll probably try and get another star, but if you want to keep hitting the draft and keep making this young, talented team even better, it just makes a whole lot of sense. Now, I'm not actually sure if this guy has committed to the draft yet. I heard some people say a minute ago that he might commit for another year, but I don't know if that's actually going to be true. It's being said that he is positioned for a bigger role with the Wolverines if he does commit back to Michigan, but he can just go to the NBA right now, which I think he will, because he's going to be guaranteed first round pick most likely to this Grizzlies team if they like him. That's what it says here, that he could commit to the Wolverines, but he's already getting a ton of NBA attention from scouts. It said he's got a really nice upside as a scorer, and he can do it all from the three levels. Got a really nice mid-range, a lot of promise as a three-point shooter as well. Even though he had a struggle and a bad start to his shooting career, he does have a really nice three-point jumper now, and he's in good form and has been a pretty good knockdown shooter for a minute now and can grow into an even better one in time. It's being said that he's not exactly that powerful as an athlete, but he's got plenty of speed, burst, and is extremely good above the rim as well. I just think this guy seems to be a pure threat as a scorer, and I think, yeah, that would be something nice the Grizzlies can maybe add to this bench. And look, unfortunately, touch wood, this doesn't happen for the Grizzlies anymore, but Ja Morant does find himself in injuries a fair bit, and they have been looking to play some guards and stuff more and more. So bringing in a guy like, I think, Kobe Bufkin to this team would actually make a fair bit of sense. You're just bringing in another scorer who can help out and not only can play the shooting guard position, but at 6'4" can also play the point guard. There's not a whole lot going on with his playmaking right now, but I believe he could maybe develop into being a solid one as the time kind of does go along. And if that's a role that the Grizzlies want this guy to go through, it could be something that they maybe do try and explore, and I think he would be maybe down to see that. Now again, this isn't going to be a certain pick. In fact, it's probably going to be extremely unlikely that Grizzlies do take this player, just based off the fact that I think this pick's getting traded. I really do. I think they're probably going to trade for another, try and get an all-star. I think they have a lot of players they can move to match up salaries to try and do so. We've been knowing about this for quite a while now, that that's probably going to be the next step for the Grizzlies if it doesn't work out in the playoffs, which it could still very well. At the time of making this video, they're only down 0-1 against the Lakers. They could very well come back and beat the Lakers in this playoffs. I'm not sure yet. And the other reality is that there is still a chance that Kobe Bufkin does say, look, I understand that I am like a pick 25 at the moment, but if I stay in Michigan for one more year and keep building my craft and whatnot, look, I might miss out on a couple $1 million, but could this help me better in my long-term career if I maybe improve enough where I get drafted as a pick 17 or a pick 18, maybe something like that with this, you know, in the next year's draft. Who really knows? At the time making this video though, he's getting a ton of attention from NBA teams and scouts, so he could very well just commit to the NBA, I think it would make a lot of sense for him to do so. But of course, if you guys haven't already, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for all the latest NBA content and NBA news. Don't forget to comment your thoughts and opinions down below. Do you guys think what I've done with this mock draft is very good? Do you guys like the picks that I've made and whatnot? Are you guys excited to see how this goes? This will probably be my last one, I think, until I do the updated lottery one, because I don't know if I can do any more. I don't think I can cover the second round. There's probably just not enough information to really go over. So I'll probably just stay with this first round. And I really do hope you guys enjoy it. It's been a wild ride. And I'm not going to lie, I'm pretty excited that this is the last one. Because there's been a lot of research, a lot of talking, but it's been all worth it. Because you guys have been absolutely awesome in the comments and have just been the best fans and terrific people, and the support has just been so great. So definitely go and check out all my other parts. This video will eventually probably be combined into the whole big part of the whole first round, which I'm super excited to put together. Probably going to take me 10 years to edit this video, but again, looking forward to it, and I just hope you guys enjoyed this so much. And as I was saying, if you do, comment your thoughts and opinions. Go and subscribe to my gaming channel and my IRL/vlog channel. Check out my podcast as well. All of them will be getting linked in the description down below. But as I was saying, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment. And I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.